Hi, I'm Dave Kerzner, and I'm very pleased to be back on Morow.com. Ironically, Static, the song, was supposed to be on New World. I had two songs that were supposed to be on New World. One was called Paranoia, which I've released, and the other, which is why the bridge sounds a little bit like Stranded. It was supposed to be a reprise in the album. I originally recorded the song Static, the title track, with Colin Edwin from Porcupine Tree on bass, Randy McStein from The Fringe, and Lo-Fi Resistance on guitar. Nick Mason actually on drums, because with Alan Parsons recording. This is just because I did a recording sample library for my software company, Sonic Reality, with Alan Parsons and Nick Mason. And so, of course, and this is for musicians, so we make music software for musicians with IK Multimedia and other companies. And so I had to use it myself, so I put together this song using the material that I recorded with Alan Parsons and Nick Mason. It wasn't really like an outtake in the sense of it wasn't something that I wanted to put on New World. It just was its own seed of a whole other concept, to me, which is essentially this idea of. And it sort of blossomed from that time actually to now, to really just sort of see all the angles of this one thing, which is we are largely distracted by so many things, cell phones, social media, even the media, news, politics, chaos in the world, or even just within ourselves and our own fears, which is something that's been going on for a long time, where we're not present. I mean, I say we, largely, not everybody, but most of us, myself included, a lot of times we spend a lot of our time thinking about the past or worrying about the future, instead of being present and just experiencing the fullness of the present moment, and without the noise and the static interference of worry or any of these things. So so static is one aspect of the song itself. In fact, the whole album has little vignettes. It's a different type of concept album. It's tied together by a common theme, which is this theme of how do you negotiate and navigate past the distractions of modern life, and the pitfalls, of all the things that go on that affect us. So that's how it started. I don't have as many guests this time. The reason I had guests the first time, it was my first solo album, and I was just like a kid in a candy store. I was like, and actually, to be honest with you, I tried not to even on that record, because I have another project called Sonic Elements that's more specifically based on the sample libraries that I produce with Sonic Reality. So I made a project called Sonic Elements, where I do Rush songs with Neil Peart, because we recorded Neil Peart for his loop library, and then we just play with Neil Peart ourselves. And I got different guests like Steve Hackett and Billy Sherwood, and I was doing that gratuitously, because it's a tribute project, and those kind of projects are great for being like, hey, let's all play YYZ, or let's do our own version of it, or let's do this or let's do that. So it's sort of like an exercise as a producer. It's a lot of fun. My solo album, I was very conscious from the beginning of letting people know who I am, and not make it about the album has this. Well, it does, but that's actually icing on the cake. The real meat of the album has to be what I have to say as an artist, the music, the songs, and then who plays on it just enhances it. But sometimes you see a list of players and you go, wow, I'm going to buy this album, and then you don't remember any of the songs. It's not your favorite album, but you just like that all these people are on it. It becomes a novelty. So I wanted to avoid it, but I couldn't on the first record, because It was like directing a film. I was casting, and I was like, oh, Steve Hackett would be so great on this part. And when he offered to play, I was like, okay, Steve Hackett, you'd be perfect for this. And then like, Nick DiVirgilio, you'd be perfect for this song dedicated to Kevin Gilbert, our old bandmate. So you have to play this. And with Russ Parrish. And so it came like that. This album, apart from the fact that I already had Colin Edwin from Porcupine Tree, and who else is outside of my main band? There may be one or two. Billy Sherwood again. You know, I love working with Billy, but he's not part of my main band. What I'm trying to say is this album, after we did the tour, it kind of formed the Dave Kerzner band. And when we go out and play, we play as the Dave Kerzner band. My albums are still under Dave Kerzner. They're not to confuse, so it's still Dave Kerzner Static. But, you know, when we perform as Dave Kerzner band, and these people are that I've been performing with are the main collaborators on Static. So we have Randy McStein, Fernando Perdomo, who was a big part of New World, and he's come back with Static. Derek Cintron, who wasn't on New World, but he performed with us last Cruise to the Edge and this Cruise to the Edge on drums. He plays drums, Nick DiVirgilio on drums. Alex Cromarty from Mostly Autumn in Montrebega. He toured with us in Europe, and he plays drums on a track or two. And then Stuart Fletcher as well, the bass player from Montrebega. The project I have I produced an album with Heather Finley, formerly of Mostly Autumn. So, and Durga McBroom sings on it a little bit as well, maybe not as much. It's a different album. It's quite dark and edgy compared to New World for me, and it's a bit more. Well, it has its range, but it's more like mid-70s progressive rock influence meets today's, you know, modern alt rock, mainstream rock, you know, sort of, and cinema. You know, that's my sort of you know, recipe or whatever you want to call it, formula. Not a formula, but that's the makeup of this kind of, you know, style of album. And each album has its own. You know, I actually have the next 2 albums written, and over half recorded for solo albums, just because just how I am. So I already know what the titles are, and the songs are already there. I just have to finish the lyrics and finish recording them. Each one is drastically different from the next, which is kind of cool. Yet at the same time, there's a common thread. If you like New World and you like Dimensionaut, which is also largely a shared album with my album, then I think there's something to love and find that you like in each of these albums that are going to come out. But at the same time, you know, each one will challenge the listener to, you know, be open to whatever, you know. They might like one better than the other, and might be like, yeah, now we're talking, you know, who knows. That's not my job. My job is just to express myself, be creative. No, and look, I mean, there's you know, first of all, when we talked about Sound Contact at the time, what we were referring to was Simon had just done a solo album, Catastrophe, and I hadn't done an album with my music at all. I write music. I used to write music. I used to work on records, but actually I wasn't writing songs for other people. I wrote songs always for myself and never released them because I was always honing the craft. And, you know, doing more ornamental things like sound design, production, things for people that technical, let's say, creative, sonically, but not necessarily like, you know, speaking, you know, my thoughts and lyrics and poetry and stuff. So, and musically that way. So so that's why I ended up contributing a lot to Dimensionaut at the time. But actually, ironically, and we had some trouble over that because there was a little bit of an imbalance. We didn't have as much input from Matt and Kelly as a result, who are the 2 other members of Sound Contact. But their contributions, let's say Matt's main contribution would be Cosmic Distance Ladder, and Kelly's would be part 2 of Mobius Slip, which I love. Those are great. So we've reformed the Sound of Contact, by the way. I know you didn't ask this, but this is... And now that I have a solo career, and Simon's doing a new solo album, and Matt is doing a solo album, Kelly's doing a solo album, we actually are coming back together as a true band with equal contributions, or we're trying to do that. So, I have my outlet for my songs, and then I bring some of my songs to Sound of Contact, and Simon, same thing, he'll bring some of his songs to Sound of Contact, and he's got other songs for his solo records or other projects. Same thing with the other guys, and then we write together. So that's cool. But in terms of, like, let's say having tons of material, it's not. I mean, I have songs. I do, like you mentioned, these pop songs or whatever, or slightly more commercial songs. Some of those are going to be on the record. I decided. I know I wrote that, and I was at one point experimenting. I share sometimes the process. It's fun. Usually with my Kickstarter backers, but sometimes on social media, just to kind of like get a little feedback. And I was like, so I'm listening to the 23rd version, mock-up of my album, and I took off all the singles. I don't know what, I wanted to see what people would say, and also put it on CD and listen to it myself and go, is it better because I did that, or is it lacking something? And actually, I found that it was lacking something. I thought it would be better. I thought it would be more like, yeah, we don't mess with the vibe. The vibe is dark, man. And it's like, well, the vibe isn't just dark. Sometimes you need a balance. And so I have like one song called Feels Like Hope, which is very triumphant and beautiful, sad and beautiful and like uplifting. And it does a similar thing to like Redemption does, A New World. It's sort of just maybe not quite as a finale of like all is well, but more like there's a silver lining, because things are sometimes a bit bleak right now with the way things are, and people get a little depressed, and this is a nice sort of way to say, well, maybe there's a way out of this, or maybe there's a way forward that finding love within, or other ways to just kind of like still be happy if the world seems to be crumbling around around you, you know what I mean? So anyway, and then there's a couple songs that are commercial that did make it onto the record, and actually I don't know if they're going to make it on the next two records either, because the next two records are concept albums. And I say the next two, I don't know if they're going to be in sequence the next two, I just have them written. Like Roger Waters, I think he wrote The Wall and The Final Cut, and Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking all at the same time, for example. I think this happens sometimes with artists. They just have a burst of inspiration and ideas and things. So, not that this has anything to do with that, but it's a similar situation. I just happen to have the next three albums kind of written, like to over half. So. Actually, it should be released by the end of April, early May. Should be. Working on that. Definitely in May, though. Has to come out. And my touring plans are to do... I don't have any touring plans, because at the earlier stages, let's say, of second album, still getting things off the ground, there's certain places where I can do that, and other places where it's still an experiment to see how many people are going to come out, how many people are aware of my music in what cities and stuff. So and it's risky and expensive. So what my goal really right now is to play festivals, cruises like this. I want to reach a lot of people. We're opening for Adrian Belew from King Crimson, and the Musical Box. The Musical Box in February 26th, but it's in Beverly Hills. So we're sort of concentrating on sections of the world. So right now, actually, we're concentrating on the West Coast of the United States. We're doing Adrian Belew on March 25th in Pasadena. And I'm looking for more gigs like that. I'll be going to LA for a while and going up the coast there. And then I'll make my way back to Europe. But I'm looking for like either a great double bill or an opening act situation, like opening for Yes or something like that, where there's a whole bunch of progressive rock fans, and maybe they've been listening to the same records over and over, and it might be refreshing to hear new music that's rooted in progressive rock, but takes it to, new places and stuff, and be turned on to it. Then, once that if that is achieved, then I can do a tour and, play theaters or, like small theaters, 300-400 people, 500 people, and have them just come to see us headline. Because, to be honest, the music that we make is more, concert, not bar music. It's more sit down, we're going to have the screen, like a new sort of Pink Floyd type band, where we have, surround sound, and or maybe not surround sound, but like really great sound, great lights, great audio-visual experience, and like a rich 2-3 hours, show, which is not something that we can just do unless there's the audience there in every city. It's going to take some work. So basically, my job is to write the music, produce the albums, put it out there, and then start reaching out to people, as many as possible. It was great. Steve Hackett playing in the background. Really love Steve. Anyway, yeah, that's my plan.